We have Nagarjuna, who's now at IISER, and he's going to be talking about the project that he's been working on for some time, which is collaboratively understanding biology education. Over to you, Nagarjuna.
Yeah, thanks. In fact, I've come at the right time because things are heating up. As you can see, the moment you bring in social, political, and the concerns, as Pankaj rightly said, and in fact, we started this lab just to address that issue. So we want to be different. So we changed the spelling of knowledge because we were inspired from the philosophy of free, and today it's called open source model. But we started with the free software as a free knowledge model. And so when we started this lab at TIFR, at Homi Bhabha Center for Science Education, we put some constraint on us. And the constraint is not to use any technology that is proprietary. So whether it's hardware, wetware, or software. So we wanted to take it as a challenge, saying that can we actually build a lab for education? Because at Homi Bhabha Center, we do science education. So that's how we started. And other important thing also is that the sophistication that we see in the labs is not always very necessary for education. So that's why we also ask this question, how do we make a home lab? So, and that's also the way how, we are doing citizen science in a very different way. And at the time when it happens, when you actually have a lab in a home, what actually happens is not the student who participates in it, the mother, father, brothers, sisters, uncles, everybody. And when they're doing something, everybody asks the question, what are you doing? And that opportunity doesn't exist when you're actually doing inside the closed walls of schools, colleges, and universities. Because nobody asks you what are you doing in the school except the progress reports and graduation things that we actually see. So we see a lot of such stories that we have. One story I can't forget to tell is that this is called a clap trap method of catching the mosquitoes at home. So you basically clap, and of course the mosquito drops. Immediately put it on a white paper and try to find out whether it's a tiger mosquito or a Anopheles mosquito or a Culex mosquito by just looking at the morphology. Of course, the students are trained to see the differences, and when that is done, the girl goes to the school, and the mother actually collects it for her. And this is done in Govandi slums, in Mumbai. And then says that, okay, I've collected a lot of, so he opens up the newspaper packet and says, these are the mosquitoes I collected for you. So which is the way, the participation happens only when we do it outside the academies, not inside the schools and colleges. So that's the wonder. So what we're doing here is that we're trying to build the capacities of what are those ideas that we can bring in so that more and more engagement can happen in education, and also put it in terms of the model. So that's basically the reason why we do this. And then the other important point that you may notice here is that there is something called STEM habits here. So we wanted to put culture in the foreground, and the habit should create the content, in the sense that, we all interested, a lot of people have spoken about it, we all create textbooks, we create workbooks and things like that. But can students themselves actually create the content by doing a project? So while doing the project, they can actually create the content, not only the data for scientists, but they can create the data for themselves as well. So this is the model that we have adopted at Knowledge Lab, which is that the culture should be in the foreground, and then to evaluate the education and the goals of education also redefined in terms of STEM habits be the objective of science education. And if you visit the website, which I have also showing you here, because it's also a kind of opportunity for me to tell you that there is this site called metastudio.org. Please remember the URL is not visible here. Metastudio.org, which is also a place for all of you to invite, free to register, and whenever you are creating your stories, please publish them as a blog to encourage the thousands of people whom we are interacting with on a regular basis. So let them also know your stories, so that they can also participate in your work, whether it is rain gauge making or whatever other things that you're actually doing. So So at this site, for example, there are a lot of examples that you could see here, but one thing I must mention right away because time will run out very fast. So the most important thing is that every day, right now from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, there is what is called a chatshala, not a patshala. So people who are working with us, students, college students, school students, and also teachers and university teachers and things like that, whoever comes there at the time who can spare, they can join the chatshala, and the link is also available when you join there. So which means that every day you can actually just participate and talk to people. There is no syllabus to that chatshala. People tell what they're doing during the last week or something like that. And it happens every day. During the pandemic, we actually did for 4 hours because people don't have schools and colleges. So, but now it has been reduced to 7 to 9, and it happens every day. So whenever you are free, just tell your stories there, and you can tell what they are doing, and you can also invite other people to participate in your program as well because they come from all over the country. So that's one of the important reasons why we, chatting is one of the important cultural aspects, and we should talk science basically most of the time. And the STEM habits that we have documented, actually it also helps you. For example, what kind of a chat will be a STEM chat? What kind of things that you have to bring in, what kind of language you have to use. And those are the things that cannot be done easily, but it has to be cultured over a period of time. So we don't really have that kind of examples of that kind. And then the other important issue, which has also been mentioned a little while, as I said, our lab, for example, doesn't use anything proprietary. Instead of using Google Maps, we use OpenStreetMap, which is also very important because OpenStreetMap, I would say, are actually all the people who are making OpenStreetMap are citizen scientists themselves. A fantastic example of how mapping can be created by citizens themselves using the public satellites data that's already available, because most of the satellites that we have up there are largely funded by the governments and the various defense research labs, etc. And therefore, you can use those satellite data, and actually these maps are actually created by people. Let us also consider the Wikipedia as another example where citizen scientists are actually doing a lot of work. Let me tell you, as a person working in TIFR, I have not met a single TIFR scientist who ever edited a Wikipedia page. I mean, apart from me, of course. The reason why I'm saying this is because they think that I can correct mistakes done by people if it is a journal paper, but not if it is on Wikipedia. That also sort of tells you the kind of conflicts, like can a scientist be an activist as well? The question has been actually asked that the people who are there, for example, one of the persons whom I know who has been contributing about the butterflies in India is a State Bank of India employee. He wanted to become a scientist, but ended up as a probation officer and then became a manager of a bank. But then he kills all his spare time by writing about butterflies in India. These are also citizen scientists. So there are a lot of such people who we could tap into, and that's the kind of model that we have sort of adapted. And if you go to this place and type, for example, model systems, because I'm a biologist, and so we do CubeChat is one of the most popular chat that happens here. So every day, people are actually contributing to this. For example, you see right in the beginning, sleep studies in dogs. So street dogs can be watched and documented. It's a model system that's available across the country, but we haven't actually given any credence to it. There is some work at IISER Kolkata that's happening. So we took their help and sort of doing it. And then what about crow? Crow is available and least studied, understanding a most intelligent animal out there, but has not been studied very clearly. Of course, a lot of bird watching happens, but bird watchers don't watch the crows. I'm sorry. They don't even consider crow as a bird because it's all available there. But the most important thing is the model system has to be that model system which is available just around you. So biodiversity at doorstep is one of our models that we have adopted. Of course, there are a lot of examples. So we have another study called Pagalpos, which is a pun on Galapagos, saying that if you want to understand evolution, can you do evolution just ahead of you? For example, we just heard about diatoms, diversity, just take a small drop of soil and put some water into it, culture it, and then start observing it on microscope. You are bound to find worms as well as diatoms as well as so many other protozoans out there. So we talk about such things. And what is evolution coming in here? Because the soil that you collected on, let's say, the east side of this campus will be different from the west side of that campus because different trees are going there. So you don't have to actually go to islands to see the biodiversity of microorganisms. For microorganisms, this separation of just about half a kilometer is more than separating between two islands. So that was the idea that, if you want to understand the evolution and such difficult topics, we have a lot of this kind of ideas out there. So I will stop here. We can continue to interact, and if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take up.
Yeah. Thanks, Nagarjuna. We have time for a few questions. Any questions?
Yeah, MetaStudio. Metastudio.org. Yeah, anyone can, and all of you are encouraged to upload your stories as well as your data. Right. And yeah, just to respond to this, one of the capacities that Knowledge Lab has built is we curate all the technology that is required to do citizen science. Like the Wikimedia platform for Wikipedia, OpenStreetMap platform for that, and a lot of free applications on Android phone which will help you to collect data, like Kobo Toolbox, for example, to create forms instead of Google forms and things like that. So that's another place where we can come and help you in creating an infrastructure for citizen science.
Okay, I can see Shalini first and then Abhijit.
I was just very curious about this OpenStreetMap. Mm-hmm. Do you see there is a because we had I work with Bhopal gas survivors communities, mm-hmm. and one of the things that we wanted to do there was to create a city, the city map, mm-hmm. With both ex-disaster zones and current disaster zones, yeah. In terms of mapping groundwater contamination, gas, water affected, yeah. Second generation impacts, and the various milestones, the places of note in the city. Yeah. The idea was that if we do it, it would also empower a lot of people in Bhopal to actually be able to tell their stories when people come, and it creates a non-disaster tourism kind of a zone in the city where people tell their own stories as people walk through. So I was just thinking, because the earlier what we thought of developing was a virtual museum and probably have a mobile app on which something like this happens. But as activism goes, we could never raise the amount of money that was required in it. And since all of us are in different areas, the human resource. So I just wanted to check with you, do you think with the open street mapping, if there is training with survivors themselves, they would themselves be able to create this kind of map?
Precisely. So what, unlike the proprietary maps that you have available, so OpenStreetMap uses what is called open layers. It's a open standard. So on the base map that you have, whether it's a political or geographical map, you can put your own data for your own research. So it just creates a transparent layer on top of it so that you can mask whatever is not required, and then you actually be able to do, and you can do analysis of the data, and you'll create a lot of those methods as well. So we can, for example, consider conducting a workshop for your students and scientists and things like that on open layers and OpenStreetMap. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. They can also, anybody can contribute, but this is a technology that you use to do that. Just wanted to tell you that just one aspect, because very important, because this question has been already raised, that the science is done with public funds. And India is possibly one of the best countries capable of generating geographical data because we have our own satellites. But unfortunately, the data is not immediately published as open data. So this is also one important political issue, but we need to raise these issues so that, the data comes immediately to people, because we are the people who funded it in the first place. That adds up to how accessible the technology should be.
Yeah, to propagate this culture, do you take some trainings and all that? Because this is very, very important, and small things, they can do wonders.
Yeah, so that's what I do. All my time is spent in conducting workshops.
But some scheduled thing, because we would also like to be part of that.
So we do workshops in very small number, So you're grouped into 6 people or so. We interact with you for a week or so. Yeah. I mean, maximum size can be anything, but it's a week-long program because a lot of cultural changes have to be brought in. So we generally conduct like Monday to Friday, or even otherwise. But because a lot of time is needed to, because we don't want to give lectures. There is no schedule. It's just a workshop where you start making something. By 4 days, you end up. For example, one of the things that we do is we create micro weather station. Everybody is talking about water thing, but then you talk about 9 parameters: humidity, temperature, including rain gauge, as well as, for example, carbon dioxide monitoring or dust particle monitoring and things like that. We have easily nowadays available. So we tell them how to create your own micro weather station. Anywhere, wherever. We can create one. For example, we can conduct a workshop in SAC here, right in Pune. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah, thanks, Nagarjuna.